Good day, everyone. Tim from Timber Visions here. So today I want to talk about some benefits of a soapstone wood stove like we have here in our house. So, there are different styles of wood stoves. You can get, your cast iron ones and, just your steel ones. And then you can get a soapstone like we have. And there are a lot of pros to it and a few cons to it as well. So I kind of want to touch on the pros and cons, and I think this is our fourth season running this wood stove, and I've learned a few things in those years on how to run one of these to get the maximum efficiency and really use its benefits to the max. So the first benefit is that a soapstone wood stove will keep the heat longer. So it's made out of stone, so it does take longer to heat it up. So it's morning right now. I just gotten this fire started, and it'll take an hour before I see any real increase in temperature in here. But the benefit of that is after this fire burns out, it will be multiple hours before that cools back off. Most times I put the last couple logs on the fire 9-10 o'clock at night, and when I get up in the morning, it's still warm to the touch, and a lot of times the fan is still running because the stove's warm enough, the fan's turned on. I think it's 110 or something like that the temperature of the stove needs to be before the fan will turn on. Anyway, so you're talking many hours of heat that stays in that stove throughout the night, and it's still putting off heat into our home and reducing the amount that the furnace needs to run. So another benefit of it is it's kind of pretty. I mean, it's got some ash and stuff on it right now because we've been burning, but you're gonna have that with stove no matter what. You could wipe it off, if you're really particular about what things look like. And if you're really particular about what things look like in your house, you might not want a wood stove in your house, or you're gonna just spend a lot of time chasing it. But anyways, they do look very nice. They're almost like another piece of furniture in the house. They're very appealing to the eye. Okay, so let's talk about how I run this stove now that I've run it for a few years, and I've slowly been gravitating this direction, and this is kind of how I found that it works the best. But when it's the coldest is when you want this thing fired up. So in the evenings after the sun goes down, that's usually when it cools off. That's when I will get a fire going. And sometimes the stove is still warm from the morning fire, but that's when I get one going. And I will load it maybe 3 times before I go to bed. So from 5 to 10, I've loaded it about 3 times. And I don't pack it in there, because if I do pack it in there, it gets a little too warm in this room, especially. The rest of the house, it's comfortable, but in here it gets a little too warm, and I don't need that much wood. I don't need that much heat coming off. But we like to keep it around the low to mid 70s in here in the wintertime. So anyway, so I will put like 2-3 pieces of wood, which mine are 16 inches long, and they're like 3 or 4 inch in thickness or width. And yeah, so kind of like what I have in here, just two pieces after I lit it with the kindling. So and the way I do it is I will I will use this shovel right here, which, you know, has expanded metal on the bottom. So ashes can fall through and the coals are left. And sometimes the coals are still burning, sometimes they've burnt out. But either way, if they burnt out, I'll just take my little torch and get them lit up again. And, you know, and I will pile them up in front of the air inlet at the bottom there, kind of like you saw at the beginning of this video. I will pile them up there like that, and then, you know, put some kindling on the sides and then over top, you know. And I've done this with just pieces of my firewood too. I will just lay a couple pieces over top of that mound of coals, and that's all you pretty much need. And if they're still burning, a lot of times in the evening, it'll still be burning. The coals will still be red. So all you basically need to do is separate the ash out from that and put those, pile them up in the middle there and throw your pieces of firewood on top of it. And it will take off on its own. If you open the damper all the way, plenty of air comes through and gets that reignited. But most of the time in the morning, I need to use the air bellow like you saw at the beginning of this video. So then once it's going, like I said, you know, I could feel heat coming off it right now. You know, it's, but the top of the stove is, you know, it's not hot yet. It takes a while for that to get going. But, you know, I'll load it, you know, in the mornings, maybe, you know, get this one going, and then I'll load it one more time, and then I just let it go. It's putting off the heat the whole day long. It's putting heat into our home. And that's all we really need is just the little, if you were heating with your house, you'd probably need it. And that's what I did the first year. The first year, I pretty much had a fire going 24/7, you know, the whole winter long. You know, in the morning, I'd get it stoked up again. You know, I would stay up late to make sure that there was a fire going all the time. And, you know, I did see some more cost savings that way, but you are married to this thing then, you know. I mean, you're always having to feed it. And the benefit of the soapstone is it retains the heat and still continues to put it off. So why not use that to your advantage, you know? And it does have, you know, a secondary burn up top, and then you can close the catalytic also. I'm not a big fan of the catalytic combustor, and I'll tell you why. It has a tendency to plug up, and when it does plug up, it's hard to keep a fire going, you know, and, you know, there's just not enough draft, basically. I don't know if it would help if I brought my fresh air inlet from outside, if that would help with that or not. I don't know, but I don't have that kit on here anyways. But yeah, the first year I tried to use it as much as I could, and you just end up having to clean it a lot, you know. This way, you're still pretty darn efficient. When this thing's going, I look out at the chimney and there's, you know, other than when you're initially lighting it, there's no smoke coming out. I mean, you can smell it, but you're going to smell it no matter what. You're burning wood gas in here, so you're going to smell burning wood either way. But I am not a fan of the catalytic combustor. So, I mean, if you're looking at one of these just for that benefit, I don't know. Be prepared to clean it a lot. And it's not easy to get at because you got to take these, there's like deflectors up top. You got to take those down and then get in there and get it out. And then there's a little seal around it and everything. You got to keep that from falling out. And yeah, I rarely close that. Maybe when it's super cold, I'll use it just for a little extra heat, but most of the time that thing's just flipped open because you just get a lot of heat from this anyway. You know, I have these thermometer things that you're supposed to keep your flue temp up high, and you know it's got an ideal range 350 to 700. And I think on a regular stove that would be ideal. With these, you just don't get that much heat going out of the flue because it's all burning in here. Everything happens in here, so you don't have to, I guess you aren't wasting that energy going out the stovepipe. I mean, it's still hot, you know, but I really got to have this thing stoking hardcore to get it up into the ideal range. So I don't think that really applies. And in my manual, it says that your stovepipe will not get as hot as a traditional, just because you're getting so much combustion happening inside of the stove instead of that going up your chimney. So since I'm not feeding it constantly throughout the day and I let it actually burn out and just radiate heat into our house, I save significantly on wood. I want to say the first year when I was burning pretty much all the time, 2 full cords is what I needed to, and we started in November, so I would say maybe 2.5 cords for if I were going to burn that way for an entire winter. But since I've started to run this way, I bet it's maybe cord and a half, you know. You just use so much less firewood, and which is a savings, you know, especially if you're like buying firewood, which I'm not. I make my own. But if you were buying firewood, you would definitely want to try to save on the amount of firewood you go through. So that would be a good way to make that happen, by kind of running it the way that I've started to run ours. Now, if on days that I'm home, you know, I'm not at work, I will feed it a little bit more. But then, like I said, it does get considerably warmer in here, and almost too warm sometimes. And yeah, you can use a damper and control all of that, but I didn't have that thing open all the way. It was only halfway open. Anyway, so you can use the damper and control it. That thing should start flaming up now. You can use the damper and kind of control that, but you know, you're going to be messing with it all the time. There is kind of a halfway point that I try to hit when I'm turning it down. I rarely turn it all the way down to minimal air, just because I'd like to try to burn it a little hotter, get the heat in the stove, and just let it, you know, let that heat go into the house then afterwards. So, and you know, they say the hotter you burn it, the more air you let. When I say they, I mean people who know about these things, you know. But the hotter you burn it, the more air you give it, the more clean it's going to burn, and the less buildup you'll have in your chimney, you know, creosote and things like that. And me burning it this way, when I do my chimney cleanings, which I usually do like a mid-season, I don't think I really need to, but I usually do. You know, there's going to be a warm day in the middle of the season, you know, January, February, somewhere around there. There's like a warm day that I have the weekend off, and I just won't start a fire that morning, and I'll do a chimney cleaning and, you know, do a deep clean on the stove and stuff, take this stuff off, and, you know, just vacuum everything out, right? It's never really dirty, but, you know, it's just peace of mind, right? But yeah, I mean, I just get, and I've done videos in the past on this, and you can try to find those and watch it, but there's very minimal, just really dry creosote that comes out. You know, it's like powder basically. And when you burn wood, you're going to have that no matter what. The thing that you don't want to see is that liquidy stuff, and I think that mostly comes from burning wet wood, because all that moisture is going up, and it kind of, you know, makes liquid creosote, which is not good stuff. I mean, no creosote is good. You don't want it to, if you don't clean it, it will eventually build up and neck down, and that can catch on fire. You know, it is flammable. So, but like I said, I clean it mid-season and then at the end of the season or before this. Like this year, I didn't get to it this spring, so I did a cleaning before I started this burn season, and I vacuumed everything out. Really good on the inside of the stove, you know, because there's kind of a platform up here, and the creosote from this will pile up down there. So it just helps with the draft and all that stuff. But getting off topic again. Anyway, so in running my stove in the way that I do, I really reduces the amount of firewood that I do need to burn. And the less firewood I have to burn, the less I have to, you know, haul into the house. And we still have the benefits of a wood stove because we can warm up the house with wood. You get the benefit of seeing the fire burning, which everyone knows is probably one of the better parts of having a wood stove, is being able to see that. Yeah, see, having that done. I can't believe I didn't have that damper open, and that thing's still lit. But anyway, yeah. So that's what I've learned in, you know, three burning seasons. I'm going to my fourth one now, I think. But yeah, this is the way I run the stove now. I just, you know, a couple burns, and like I said, after this initial one, I'll feed it again. Once that's lit good, then I'll bring the damper down, and that'll make it last, you know, until noon or so. The fire will still be burning. There'll be, you know, some hot coals in there, and it's putting off good heat. And then, like tonight, I work tonight, so I will get it going again before I head to work, and you know, do 1 or 2 loads then, and then turn the damper down before I leave, and, you know, to a halfway point, and then that'll still be warm when I get home in the morning. I work a 12-hour shift. It'll still be warm to the touch when you, not hot, but warm to the touch. And a lot of times the fan will still be running because the stove is over that 110 or 100 and whatever it is, 25. I don't know off the top of my head, but it has to be warm enough for it to do that. Which reminds me, I'm gonna have to wrap this up before this fan kicks on, because that'll be annoying for the video. So I do want to thank you for stopping in and watching my video. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you do have one of these style stoves, you know, let me know in the comments what you think of how I run this, if it's similar to how you do it, and, you know, maybe you have a better tip than I do for people. But yeah, that's just what works best for us here. And if you've been thinking about getting one of these, maybe this will help you out. Like I said, initially, she was burning all the time, but just use that soapstone to your advantage. It's going to put off heat for hours after that thing goes out. So I want to thank you for stopping watching my video. And until next time, be safe, brothers and sisters.